Coming up on Theatre Talk.
Sometimes you go to the theatre and I, for one, my heart sort of drops when you come into a theatre and you see a sofa facing you and you know some people are going to come into this room, smoke some cigarettes and behave, you know.
Theatre Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation.
We grow up.
It always happens. Nothing is forever.
That's the rule.
Everything ends.
And so our story begins.
From New York City, this is Theatre Talk. I'm producer Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post. Susan, you know, there is a wonderfully imaginative and inventive play on Broadway now called Peter and the Starcatcher, which is about Peter Pan, by way of J.M. Barrie, uses these wonderful old Victorian theatrical techniques.
It's a prequel to Peter Pan.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrific play. It was written by our dear old friend Rick Elice, who is back with us on Theatre Talk, bringing along with him someone who is making his debut appearance on Theatre Talk, one of the great, great actors, Mr. Roger Rees, who has directed this terrific play, Peter and the Starcatcher.
And both are nominated for Tonys. Rick for 2 Tonys.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
The other one.
as long as I was there, I
Yes,
figured,
that's
you know.
right.
What is your Peter and what else?
They're in an interesting quirk of this particular season. There were 2 plays included in the category for best score.
Oh, right.
One Man, Two Governors, and Peter and the Starcatcher. Wayne Barker is our brilliant composer, and I happen to write the lyrics for the songs that are in the play. So, therefore, my double nominee, nominated. It's double nominee sounds like a medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
It creeps me out a little
And we
bit.
should say that Rick and Roger have been partners for a long time. Is it impossible to live with this guy with his 2 Tony Award nominations?
No, I tell you what was scary was the you know, and it truly is enough to be nominated. It's the cliche of all time, isn't it? But it's just jolly to be in the group, you know, and for people to notice what you do. It's delightful, and you know, we're not ever defined by one thing that we do. So it's very nice that people notice as you go down the road somehow.
And you're a Tony winner.
I am a Tony
Nicholas
winner.
Nicholson,
That's
yeah.
right. I won for best makeup in 1930.
A category that's no longer in competition.
Now, Rick, I know you're a big J.M. Barrie fan, as I am too. Is that what got you thinking about creating this prequel, as Susan calls it, to Peter Pan?
Well, first, let me just say I think prequel is a very good word, Susan.
Thank you very much.
Regardless of Michael's aversion to it for some reason.
It's a jargony word.
Well, maybe. But
Well, I don't know how else you convey the spirit in which Peter and the Starcatcher is.
the term du jour seems to be an origin story.
Oh.
Or,
never
even
heard that.
trendier, a reboot.
Oh, God, I think I prefer prequels more and more right now.
Thank you very much.
So for people our age, it's a prequel.
An origin story.
You know, as much as I love J.M. Barrie, to be honest, Roger and Alex Timbers, the co-director.
Alex Timbers, the co-director of
and Tony nominated co-director of Peter and the Starcatcher, were developing this novel written by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson, which is an origin story of how this boy becomes the character we know as Peter Pan. And this novel was being developed by Roger and Alex up at Williamstown Theater Festival when Roger was running Williamstown, and Alex was up at Williamstown developing what would become Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson. And Roger and Alex were working with the novel, and they did a workshop up in Massachusetts, which the powers that be came to see and thought enough of to want to take it to another workshop. And for that workshop, they needed some text because the directors had determined that the actors would be adults and that the story would have an adult sensibility, and the novel is written specifically with a young reader in mind. Right. So as a friend of the family, they said, would you write some stuff for the actors to say? And I did. And to that workshop, Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson were in attendance. When they heard it, Dave Barry said, who wrote that? That's not in the book. And I sort of, you know, edged to the door. And then he said, it's funny. So then I edged back into the room. And Tom Schumacher from Disney Theatrical said, did you like it? And Dave and Ridley said, yeah. And he said, well, Rick's going to write the play. And somehow that's how I got the gig.
What I love about the direction, Roger, is you draw on these wonderful Victorian theatrical techniques? I mean, you've been in the theater a long, long time.
Not that long, I would say.
No. But I mean, you were aware of the sort of history of these kind of theatrical techniques from your English background?
I think that's true. I think people are wrong to. But sometimes people sort of rather cavalierly say, oh, it's pantomime or it's British musical or thing. It isn't that. It's much that we recognise, much that we've all done before, but put together they become kind of really useful tools. Like simple things like sticks and ropes are used to designate and delineate an area. But this is not anything new, and no one actually flies in the play. There's no wires or anything. But it's true to say that at one point a boy, for the first time ever in Broadway history, actually flies through the air at one point in the air with
no
sustained
wires.
by nothing at all. You know, just by jumping and trusting his friends. And jumping and trusting your friends is the history of the theatre of all time, really. That's what we've always done. That's the simple things we like. And so, yes, we use a ladder to put a little girl on the end, and then unseen by anyone else, the ladder's pressed down like a seesaw. What do you call it in America?
Seesaw.
A seesaw. And
that's what Shaw meant when he said two countries separated by
a teeter-totter. Don't you call it a teeter-totter? Yeah, but you know, simple things like that.
She says prequel.
I know, teeter-totter, please.
Well, I'm of the teeter-totter era.
But we use things that are
prequels on a
recognisably. We use just simple tricks like that. You know, leisure domain, conjuring. You know, using someone over here to distract you while you're doing something over there. Those simple things that we've sort of forgotten in the land where sometimes you go to the theatre, and I, for one, my heart sort of drops when you come into a theatre and you see a sofa facing you, and you know some people are going to come into this room, smoke some cigarettes, and behave. You know, and I feel somehow that the theatre is a more imaginative arena than that. You know, the possibility of theatre, given a blank arena, is an enchanting thing.
But I also love the fact that with the sticks and ropes and ladders and all that, you are endlessly creating ships and islands and all this kind of stuff, when we have come through a time, Rick, where you would have spent $15 million to have a gigantic dragon flapping its wings above it. I mean, you're really moving away from the super high-tech special effects driven Broadway that we know now.
What's the unlikely mashup of Roger Rees and Alex Timbers, really coming from different generations, different countries, different theatrical sensibilities. What was fascinating to me when I was asked to write it, the reason I jumped at the chance, in large part, was that their skill sets overlap in this particular way, which is poor theater technique. And poor theater isn't about economics per se. It's really about making the most of the least.
Right.
And at its heart, it's about everybody doing everything. And that idea, that sort of corporate nature of theater, not corporate like a big company comes along and pays for it, but corporate like communism of the theater, where everybody does everything, is very moving to me, and is my background too. When Roger says the moment of flying is about a boy who jumps and trusts that he's going to be caught, what's really brilliant about what Roger and Alex did is they found a way for the plot of the play, which at its heart is about discovering that life is better when you're part of something bigger than yourself. And the production is actually a demonstration of that very concept, physically and emotionally, for the audience to see. So there's this wonderful overlay of production and play, of presentation and material, that is so moving for me to watch, because sometimes you can write something and someone comes along and has their own idea about how to do it, and there's the wrong kind of tension. You find that you're not working on the same show.
Right.
And here we were all very much working on the same show. And it was very lucky for me to come into it after a point where Roger and Alex were so set in their minds of what they wanted it to be like. Made my job easy, which was going to...
It was thrilling, too, for me to work with Alex Timbers, who's a brilliant theatre mind.
And I have to say, he's in Germany right now, so he can't be here.
No, and so I can say anything I like about
it. He really did all the work, and Roger was just lending his famous name, right?
Yeah. I just sat there on the sofa. It was good. No. But it's true, and we both, in a way... I tell you one other thing, and these two gentlemen won't mind me saying this either, that Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson have written the first novel, Peter and the Starcatchers, which moves on into several other novels, and at no time do they actually really kind of meld with the origin of the Peter Pan story as we know it from J.M. Barrie, and I would lay that all at Rick's door, which is he actually brought the, you know, the crocodile ticks, the
Yep.
Hook has lost his hand, you know, all those sorts of things. Tinkerbell is created. All those things make you believe that in a few years' time, Peter Pan will absolutely land on Wendy's windowsill.
Well, the style of the play too. You know, James Barrie used contemporary references. He used anachronisms. He used puns. He used alliteration. He used low comedy. He used high comedy. He had songs. There was a real attitude about his play that we forget because most of us, I dare say, know about Peter Pan because of the Mary Martin version or the Kathy Rigby version,
or the Walt Disney movie,
or the feature animation, and not so much about where it started originally, which was as a play in development, in rehearsal, where some of it was formed and some of it was evolved in rehearsal, just
with
like
Maud Adams.
With Maud Adams, and the guy who played Captain Hook originally, Gerald du Maurier, father of Daphne du Maurier,
right.
and brother of Sylvia Llewellyn Davies, who's the mother of the boys that Barrie used to hang out with in Kensington Gardens, and so he got the part in part to endear Barrie more to the Llewellyn Davies family, but also because of his particular essential quality as an actor. Captain Hook, we now think of as being that flamboyant sort of Charles II wig.
Cyril Richard.
That's right.
Cyril Richard was doing Gerald du Maurier. When Christian Borle showed up with us in La Jolla, and we had this idea of what the part would be, in the same way that Barrie dressed Hook on du Maurier, we were able to, you know, in this wonderful kind of Henry of Mayfair way, as Tom Stopper would say, we were able to tailor-make this part in concert with an actor and his talent and his genius,
cut and shape,
and our instinct about, you know, what the play would support, my instinct of what would be funny for the writer, and we were constantly evolving the thing. It was very, very exciting evolution, as it was with Celia and the role of Molly.
Yeah, well, I thought Christian Borle, my co-star on the hit NBC TV series Smash,
You've got billing over his, don't you? Yeah.
You were terribly good.
But Christian is wonderful because Christian does put you in mind of the Cyril Richard kind of style of just gigantic, fabulous, flashy, hammy, look at me and you're going to have a great time with me jumping around up here.
We're immensely proud of these 12 actors. You know, they're all of them writers, musicians. They're very complex and in-depth people. And I'd even cite Adam Chandler Barat as who plays Peter, who is not hands on hip, wearing green tights and a red wig and freckles. He's this very modern, strange, kind of interesting young man who kids today can actually relate to completely. You know, and we're very pleased with that.
He's an actor who's incapable of being dishonest on
Yeah,
stage.
terribly good.
You know, I just real quickly say that I wanted also as a guy to be able to write a part like the girl hero in the story and sort of base her on the DNA of characters like Scout Finch and Joe March, Anne of Green Gables, the characters that I know women my age were really turned on by when they were girls and who felt empowered by characters like that. And I thought I would love to be able to write a really strong, central, empowered, super smart, super curious girl character who would be the hero of the story. And in La Jolla, I had screwed up and written the boy in the wrong way. And we had a great actor out there playing the part that I wrote, but he was a hero from the very beginning. He was Peter Pan, except without the pan. But he was called Peter, and he was the ringleader, and all the other boys looked up to him or were jealous of him, and one of them sort of, you know, was protected by him. And between La Jolla and New York, one of the great things about the Page to Stage program out in La Jolla is you get to really workshop a play and understand it better, and you're never under any pressure in terms of press coming and feeling that you're running out of time.
Right.
And the big lesson that we learned was that the character of this boy needed to begin somewhere very different from where he needed to end up. It sounds sort of rudimentary.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't this sort of the standard way you do a play?
But I'm just not that. I wasn't that smart. And so suddenly, Adam Chandler Barat became the ideal person to play this thing. And that was, in fact, when we changed the title. We were Peter and the Starcatchers out in La Jolla, which is the name of the novel.
Right.
And we dropped the S not because we didn't have any money. We dropped the S. We dropped the S because at the point where I realized how to write the boy, I realized this was a story about this boy and this girl who become what they are at the end of the play because of the accidental meeting of their accidental meeting and what happens to them over the course of the evening. And so the play could be called Boy and Girl, or it could be called Peter and Molly, but instead we called it Peter and the Starcatcher because at the end of the play, the boy becomes Peter and the girl becomes the Starcatcher, and that made the dropping of the S sort of a fundamental alteration for us.
I think what we've experienced is a wonderful kind of reminder that in the theatre you should take nothing for granted. You should always say, is Othello really a competent, wonderful general and a wonderful man? And perhaps he's just a wonderful general and a disastrous man. And I think there was a point, we had a long discussion, we use a yellow rubber glove as a bird, and it makes a wonderful noise like a bird, and as soon as it comes on, held by one of the actors, someone says, hello bird, and the audience go, oh, that's a bird. They just know, But there was a long argument at one time about this should be a puppet with eyes and wings and things, and just reducing it down to that simple thing it seems to me essential in this sort of kind of game we're playing.
I want to talk about your lives in the theater, because you guys have been partners for how many years now?
30 years.
That long?
I know the years have flown by like decades.
We met in high school.
Yeah, that's right. Where did you guys meet? How did
outside the stage door of the Winter Garden Theatre.
Somewhat improbably at the dress rehearsal of a musical called Cats. Roger was in town for one day, and I was at the dress rehearsal of Cats because I was working at an advertising agency, Sereno Coyne, and I took my young intern. I was a part-time copywriter, and the people who were working on this show that no one had seen because it had only played in London, it was just about to start at the Winter Garden, and we were invited to go, and I brought my young intern, a young boy named Hal Luftig. You may have heard of him.
Producer of Evita.
And Roger had just finished making a movie called Star 80 the day before in L.A. and had flown to New York as a stopover because the day after he was beginning rehearsal on Tom Stoppard's play, The Real Thing.
That's right.
And he stopped by the Winter Garden to say hello to his friends, Trevor Nunn and Johnny Napier and Gillian Lynn. And he came walking down the aisle, and I had seen Roger the year before, Nicholas Nickleby, and had turned my apartment, which is sort of somewhat smaller than the size of your table here, into a shrine. And he came walking down the aisle, and I said, Hal, do you know who that is? And he said, oh yeah, that's Roger Rees. He taught me last year when he was here doing Nicholas Nickleby on Mondays and Tuesdays when the RSC was off. Roger taught at Columbia, and Hal was one of his students.
Right.
So I said, you know him? Well, when this Cats thing is over, you're gonna introduce us. So anyway, thanks to T.S. Eliot and Hal Luftig.
Well, let's finish the story.
I was so patient. I waited all the way through the show about cats.
And I was lucky enough to meet this tall young American in a Burberry raincoat outside the stage door, and it did the trick. Right.
Really, it was an instant sort of a.
We wrote letters to each other for a long time, and then he came and saw The Real Thing, and luckily for me, Henry in The Real Thing, the very first production of it, Henry is one of the greatest parts ever written, a play about love, wonderful play about love, and he seemed to approve, so that was kind of.
Well, let me just, it occurs to me that the name of this, I see from the mug on the table that the name of this program is Theater Talk. So I just thought I would try to say, to paraphrase Stephen Sondheim, this is the thing. Stephen Sondheim wrote, I love him, I'm his, and everything he is. And my paraphrase would be, I aspire to be. That is a man whom actors from Judi Dench to Jude Law adore being on stage with. A man whom writers like Tom Stoppard and Aaron Sorkin swear by. A man whom directors like Trevor Nunn, Jack O'Brien, Alex Timbers are inspired by. A man who asks Christian Borle and Celia Keenan-Bolger and Adam Chandler Barat and Teddy Bergman and Arnie Burton and Matt D'Amico and Kevin DeLagula and Carson Elrod and Rick Holmes and Greg Hildreth and Isaiah Johnson and David Rosmer to walk through fire and water, and they do gladly. And a man who a man who chose 30 years ago against impossible odds to make a life with me.
Wow.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
With Marshall Brickman, is that? That's right. Is there anything more to say there? I don't know, Roger. I think we should talk.
I'm dumbfounded. I'm gobsmacked. No.
It's English for dumbfounded.
That's right. I'm fascinated by your really great career. How did you get involved in the theater? Why did you fall in love with the theater?
You know, I was an art student in the days when you really couldn't be. I remember my father had to sign some forms for me, and he died pretty shortly after. He never saw me act, but he didn't really understand what I was doing as an art student. He was a policeman. He was a man's man, kind of very much, and it was sort of hard for him to understand. But I went to art school. I knew I was good because people stole drawings from my portfolio. So I had a sense that I was pretty good. And then I went to the Slade School of Fine Art. My father died in the third year I was there. So I started to paint scenery all around the country in Great Britain, which I'd done in the vacations before that. And I'm really good. I can paint scenery. And I was working at Wimbledon Theatre in South London, a beautiful Victorian theatre, where I'd worked a little bit time before that as a stagehand on a production of Peter Pan with Donald Sinden, who I acted with many years later.
Donald. London Insurance you did.
Yeah, who taught me everything. If I know anything about comedy or anything, or listening to an audience, I got that from Donald Sinden, fantastic. And I was painting a backcloth of a toy shop from Babes in the Wood, alone in the theatre one afternoon, empty theatre, and Arthur Lane, who was one of the great last actor managers of all time, walked across the stage. He had a wooden leg by this time, so I guessed he was down there because I could hear this rather funny. I looked at, oh, Mr. Lane, what do you want? And he was an actor manager. Arthur Lane ran that theatre for years and years with Audrey Lupton, and they did a different play every week. And he said, would you like to be in a play the week after next? I was 17 years old, and I was so flattered, 40 foot up in the air. I said yes. And I've never painted scenery since.
What was the play that he put you in?
I was played the lead in the play by Stanley Horton, a play that Laurence Olivier loved very much, called Hindle Wakes. Wakes means holidays. So it's the first first play about female liberation. This young son of a mill owner in Lancashire gets a young girl pregnant, and he wants her to go away and hide the baby, and she refuses. It's a wonderful play by Stanley
And you got
Horton.
the lead for your...
I played the lead.
Your first time on
and
stage.
I've never been as good as I was in that play as I remember. You know, it was extraordinary. And he paid me £4 a week for painting scenery, and I got £3 a week for being in the play.
That's why he was a good producer.
Exactly.
There's something wrong with that.
And you had no stage training at all. I mean, is it
Not
just,
at all.
That first time you walked out in front of an audience, was there fear?
He just wanted a boy. You know, this was Arthur Lane who did this thing. I think I might have told you this before, but he did a different play every week, and he always played the father, whatever the play was. And everyone else would sort of rehearse a bit, but he would just tear up the Samuel French script and leave a bit on the coffee table, a bit on the mantelpiece, a bit over there by the window, and he'd go, oh, well, I see the vicar has been here. Goes to the mantelpiece. Today, and he
that is so much better than what they do now, where they put the earpieces in people's hair and cover them up with the wigs.
Well, isn't there a story about the earpiece where the actress, very famous actress,
Mary Martin.
Yes, something, and says, well, I must be leaving you now. Moves to the piano, pick up the shawls. She's speaking her stage direction.
To the piano,
pick up the shawl.
No, I'm thinking the Mary Martin one, but she was doing Legends out of town,
yes.
and they gave her an earpiece, and it unfortunately was picking up taxi cab dispatches.
Oh, no, really?
Instead of her
Unfortunate.
lines.
She started giving destinations.
Might be a way to go with the
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
we could offer both things in the theatre now.
Absolutely hilarious. All right, well, the play is called Peter and the Starcatcher. A wonderfully imaginative, very moving, and very funny play. At what theater are you guys
The
at?
Brooks Atkinson Theatre, where we play 8 shows a week. And
Beautiful theatre. It looks so great in there, the show. Yeah.
And you're nominated for how many Tonys?
We're nominated for 9 Tony Awards, which, contrary to some of the advertising you might see, is more Tony Awards than any play this season, which is something that I like saying before June 10th.
Wait a minute, contrary to the advertising, you are one of the great ad men of all time before you got this gig writing for shows.
Yes, yeah.
Aren't you in charge of your own ad campaign, Rick?
Now, he's a writer now, right?
Believe it or not, I forgot about that. No, the advertising is in the hands of people who are now much more expert than I ever was. It's just a a thing I like to say.
Rick Elice and Roger Rees. The show is called Peter and the Starcatcher at the Brooks Atkinson Theater. Thanks a lot for being charming guests.
Thank you so much. Thank both of you.
I thought he was going to propose marriage. That's what I was waiting for.
I was getting very, very...
I know. I thought
No, this is the week to do it because Obama went out on the limb and I thought I would climb out after him.
Follow that trunk, Smee! Get me to that island!
Get to the island, Peter! Don't let that trunk out of your sight!
Swim on against the current, swim on against the sea. Though the tide may turn against you, though too strong the tide may be. And though your arms be leaden, slicing through the spray of foam, swim on, swim on, swim on, swim on, swim on against the current, till your courage brings you home, till you stand on the land safely home.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.